Our gospel for this All Saints Sunday comes to us from John, the 8th chapter. When Mary came where Jesus was and saw him, she knelt at his feet and said to him, "Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died." When Jesus saw her weeping and the Jews who came with her also weeping, he was greatly disturbed in spirit and deeply moved. He said, "Where have you laid him?" They said to him, "Lord, come and see." Jesus began to weep. So the Jews said, "See how he loved him." But some of them said, "Could not he who opened the eyes of the blind man have kept this man from dying?" Then Jesus, again greatly disturbed, came to the tomb. It was a cave, and a stone was lying against it. Jesus said, "Take away the stone." Martha, the sister of the dead man, said to him, "Lord, there is already a stench because he has been dead 4 days." Jesus said to her, "Did not I tell you that if you believed, you would see the glory of God?" So they took away the stone. And Jesus looked upward and said, "Father, I thank you for having heard me. I knew that you always hear me, but I have said this for the sake of the crowd standing here, so they might believe that you sent me." When he had said this, he cried with a loud voice, "Lazarus, come out." The dead man came out, his hands and feet bound with strips of cloth, and his face wrapped in a cloth. Jesus said to them, "Unbind him and let him go." This is the word of the Lord. You may be seated. I'd like to invite the children forward. How you doing, Beck? Thanks for acolyting today. Hey, Ellie. Thomas. That's the opposite direction, Jonah. All right, they're coming. All right, little by little. Jenna, what's going on? Oh, hey, Thomas, actually, that's kind of getting into my stuff. Joe, good to see you. We're missing one. Well, I don't know where Jackson went. Oh, no, he's right behind me. Oh, you're talking about your brother? He's a teen. Okay. You're never too old to come forward for the children's time. And that's my opinion. Probably doesn't want to. So can I ask you guys a somewhat serious question? If the answer is no, it's totally fine. But have any of you ever had somebody in your family or somebody close to you die or pass away? Yeah, who's that, Jenna? Your grandfather passed away? And your cats? No, that hurts too. Actually, honestly, losing a pet can be... who'd you lose? Second? Before you were born? Yeah. That's right. You lost a family pet in the house fire. Remember that? Yeah. Oh, that was also very sad. So, I remember that was tough. Bergen Hadley, have you guys lost anyone close to you in your family? Not really. Okay. Yeah. Thomas Ellie. Gladlu. Yeah, my mom and your grandma passed this year too. So. One of the things that we're going to do today is you might hear a name, or if somebody out here might have given us a name for somebody they'd like to ring a bell for. And it's a way of commemorating the first anniversary. We can always do more, but the first anniversary of losing that person. When we ring that bell, though, we're not saying that this is final, right? That's when you ring the bell and we say that person's name. It's not like we're going to stop remembering them. It's not like we give up on ever seeing them again. Here in the church, what we believe is just like with Lazarus. And actually, Ross, would you grab the bell and ring it for us real quick? Because you're going to hear this. It's going to happen during a song. We have this song during the offering. And after each of these names comes the ringing of a bell. Here, why don't you? Go ahead. And there's something kind of beautiful about that sound. It's soft and it's clear, and I don't know, sometimes you feel different ways about the people who we've lost, but it's good to maybe remember them with just a simple sound, and that bell, I think, does that. If any of you have a bell in your house, you can also do that. You can remember by ringing a bell on your own or doing something special. Some people will light a candle. I would recommend that you spend some time thinking about the person who you've lost, if you do, because it's really important. They meant a lot to us. The good news is, because of Jesus, and because of what Jesus showed he could do through Lazarus and his own resurrection, we get to see those people again. So today marks the first day of a separation, but there will be a reunion, I promise you that. Russ, I'm supposed to ask you what you lost. We'll handle that one later. All right. Why don't we sing the song? Remember us, they're all children of God. Ready? If anybody asks you who I am, who I am, who I am. If anybody asks you who I am, tell them I'm a child of God. Will you join your hearts in prayer with me? O Lord, may the meditations of my heart and the words of my mouth be acceptable to you, O Lord, my rock and my redeemer. Amen. So this week, I came into the sanctuary after hearing some strange sounds, and it was like a sad little sound. I thought that maybe somebody was playing a single tambourine, as if you could just isolate one of those little tambourine discs, and this little chirping sound. And I looked from up in the balcony, and there was a bird in our sanctuary, a little female sparrow. And the female sparrow spent some time up here. It spent some time, I think, actually perched here for a while. Look for bird poop on your back, Kara, just make sure. Okay, no, you didn't sit anything. And Vic, the sparrow spent some time on top of your piano, too. So make sure that you get that cleaned off eventually, too. But anyway, so I made sure to close all these doors here, and then I saw how it got in. That window right there, with a stiff breeze, will just slightly crack open. And that was enough to allow ingress for this poor little bird who was just making the saddest little noises. There were these pitiful little chirps, and they were coming at this frequency, too, that was just sounded desperate. It sounded so trapped and scared. And I thought there's so much humanity in this little bird. I see so much of us in this predicament that this bird found itself in. And I wanted to do something. I had to try to get the bird out of here. So what I did is I came in after closing up all the different spots I could go, and I started opening windows. Right? I started opening all the windows in here, and I think that's when he spent most of his time, up on that power cord there, as far away from me as she could possibly get. And then after opening all the windows, I went on the other side of those doors where those glass portions allow me to look. And that's when he flew back to your spot there, Kara. And I stared at the bird, and she stared at me. And she didn't do anything for the longest time. We just kind of locked eyes. Like, are you going to hurt me? Is it safe? Is this a trap? Again, there's so much humanity in that little bird. I saw it there. And I think to myself on All Saints Sunday, the best place to begin when we explain what a saint is a saint is rooted in the same lived experience, the same life that we all are, trapped in the same scary situations that we sometimes find ourselves, staring at the same death that we all must die, caught, as our confession and forgiveness said this morning, in those same patterns of sin that we can't get loose from. We're trapped like that little bird. So I think to myself oftentimes of how much do I really want to go into just how dark the world is. And this is a week, of course, in which people's anxieties are extremely high. We're very worried about the state of our democracy in the world and what's going to happen. It can be maybe sobering to remind ourselves that we have been through very dark times before in the past as well. I was reading just this week about our founding fathers. When they set up the Constitution, they knew one of the unresolved issues was going to be and always was going to be slavery. Many of the founding fathers owned slaves and made plans upon their death to free the slaves that they owned. Some of them went back on that plan because they realized, wait a minute, if the slaves go free when I die, I might die of unnatural causes rather soon. So they knew that the institution they were taking part in was no fun for anyone. But this is Washington, who was an accountant. He was a very, very good accountant. He looked at his accounting of his fields and how much it cost to keep slaves, and he said, this is untenable. Slavery doesn't make economic sense. Therefore, if we ignore the problem, in a generation it will go away. And then they invented the cotton gin. And suddenly, slavery didn't just become profitable, it became extremely profitable. And this was at a time where they had shut down so much of the Atlantic slave trade. None of our partners wanted to be participating in stealing lives off the coast of Africa. The British had long since considered that to be abhorrent. So what did they do? They said, we must produce these bodies internally. So the average African slave here would begin to get pregnant at age 13 in the South in chattel slavery. And there was a special provision that she could go free after 15 pregnancies. Just think for a second the moral conundrum of bringing 15 lives, not just lives, your own children, into the world to secure your freedom. And yet so much of it wasn't even your choice. The lives that you would be bringing in were as a result of awful, awful things. This is the kind of unfreedom, the kind of illiberty, the kind of sinful systems that we've done before. Human beings can really, really screw stuff up. We have the capacity to be quite evil. How is a saint separate from that? You know, here in the Lutheran Church, we look upon something like that and we say, we are all saint and sinner. It's impossible to imagine ourselves as completely separate from those sinful systems that exist in the world, and yet we are called into something different through our very sainthood, right? Again, I think back to that little bird. I think back to that bird and its trappedness. I feel that sometimes. I feel like, what can I do? I am stuck where I am. And for so much of the way that we've related the stories of the saints to people in the past, we've done through these Roman statuaries, right? You'll see this beatific-looking person, and they're holding like 2 fingers or a hand, and their head is slightly cocked in this compassionate but yet dispassionate kind of way. It seems so far from my experience, my energy and my fervence, even my unsettledness and all these emotions that are at work within me and all of us. They seem to be detached. But let's maybe go back to what we heard in today's gospel reading. Okay, every single person in our gospel reading, by the way, should have a saint in front of their names, right? We're talking about Saint Mary, Saint Martha. Lazarus is a sainted too in the traditional. So these people are biblical saints. And what are they like? They're weeping, they're recriminatory, they're accusatory of one another. Lazarus, we don't see how he died or what his feelings were, but I have to imagine, like every other person I've ever known, he was scared of dying. And he probably had a lot of emotions going around. These are not detached figures. These are real people whose everyday lives look a lot like each of yours. And I think that there is some comfort in that, of knowing that to be a saint doesn't mean to be perfect. It doesn't mean to get it all right. It means that every day you step into the same muck that every human being before you ever has to. And maybe it's awful today, but maybe you did your best. Maybe you didn't do your best. But maybe you had God with you, the God of life, who helped you through it and just put one little kernel out there of hope for whoever was near you that day. To me, that's what a saint is. There's one more thing that I want to say about this. There was this great story. The guy's name, I believe, is Nicholas Worth. He was in the British Home Department at the onset of World War II. And he had this connection in Czechoslovakia. And through this connection to Czechoslovakia, he was able to rescue, I think it was about 128 children out of that country, Jewish children, who were otherwise doomed. He only had a set number of seats that he was able to take over. 128 was exactly how many I think he had. And so he prioritized the children and left behind the parents. Made that hard choice to make orphans of a lot of people. But in many ways, the parents themselves said that this is what they wanted. They wanted their children to live, even if it meant paying their price. And that was a decision that he did in anonymity. he never told this story to anyone, maybe other than his wife. And in 1979, there was this television program on the BBC, and the program was all about telling people's stories and kind of surprising them. So he gets invited to the story. He's just sitting in the audience. You know, you think that you're just a television audience member, and suddenly they call out Nicholas's name, and they say, Nicholas, thank you for joining us here today. Is there anyone here who owes their life to you? And around him, the rest of the studio audience stands up. These people who are no longer children, but now grown adults, who have their own families, who have lived because of what he did. And he's got these thick bottle glasses, but they don't stop us from seeing his tears, right, as they flow down. And the question they ask him is, why didn't you tell anyone? Why did you never tell anyone what you did? And he goes, I was so ashamed. They said, ashamed? Why? He goes, I could have saved more. I should have saved more. To be a saint is to let that unresolvedness known to. If we are going to be saints in this world, we are going to be saints in a broken world, where we can always do more, where there's always more that's capable of us. And unfortunately, that's going to be the case until the time comes when Christ appears and makes all these things possible, when even death itself cannot separate God's mission, when even the things that are so tremendously evil in this world will yield against God's justice. And finally and fully, we will see the kingdom roll down. And that will be the moment where the saints in glory are all together, where we will be with those who have come before us, who have been partners in this holy work, those who we've lost recently and those who we've lost a long time ago. That will be the promised heavenly reunion, and there will be no shame in that moment. There will be only joy. Amen. And speaking of inviting,